Hello, YouTubers. This is Gold Standard User 924 coming at you with Wrestling Reimagining miniseries once again. So, we're going to pick up where we left off from Super Brawl as we transition over to our third installment in the Wrestling Reimagining series with WCW 1998. And that particular March pay per view, we're going to be going into detail regarding WCW Uncensored. So basically, as far as the concept behind Uncensored is concerned, this was basically, before WWE had Extreme Rules, WCW also had their own gimmick theme pay per view called, like I said, Uncensored, where you had all the matches that were contested under no disqualifications, no countouts. Falls count anywhere is kind of an optional route, but primarily no DQs and no countouts for um, a good majority of the matches presented on the pay per view. So I'm still keeping that concept and also keeping the name as well. If you watch my Super Brawl 8, the main event, Sting successfully retained the World Heavyweight Championship belt against Scott Hall. Scott Hall was the number one contender from World War III, so Scott Hall and Sting main evented, but at the end of the day, Scott Hall came up short, so Sting successfully defended the World Heavyweight Championship belt in the progress. So yeah, and also, Kevin Nash had his program with the Giant at that February pay per view as well. Ends in a pretty controversial finish and taking the Giant out of action for several months. So, before we get a little into the bigger marquee matches on Uncensored, so we're going to kind of kick things off with the undercard, with the opening bout. And that particular opening bout will be a six-man tag team match, Tornado Rules. Ultimo Dragon teams with Juventud Guerrera and El Dandy as they take on Psychosis, Yuji Nagata, and Kazayashi. So you could build this up very simply. Ultimo Dragon still has his beef going on with Sonny Ono and tracing back to the later half of '97 where Sonny Ono ended up betraying Ultimo Dragon and and as a result, he brings in Yuji Nagata. He becomes his manager. So Dragon and Sonny Ono have been kind of at each other's throats, and Psychosis. Sonny Ono would bring in Psychosis. He would also manage him. Kaz Hayashi, he would also manage. To put Nagata and Hayashi, these two Japanese wrestlers together. Um, so yeah, so Ultimo Dragon's at war with Sonny Ono. That's kind of the main feud. And to kind of counteract Sonny Ono's team, Ultimo Dragon assembles his own, bringing in two luchadors in Juventud and El Dandy. So expect some high flying, fast paced action. This is just basically a match to showcase these international wrestlers, and you'll expect a lot of brawling and like I mentioned with the fast-paced action, a lot of high-flying spots. Hopefully, no botches. But I think this could be a pretty tolerable opening bout. Should be very solid and enough to really get the crowd rolling. And Ultimate Dragon will win for his team. So yeah, so that's going to be my six-man tag team opening match. Television title, we have Conan defending the belt against Marty Jannetty. Yes, turns out that Marty Jannetty was, in fact, in WCW around this time. Basically, primarily a enhancement talent at this point, but how this kind of stems is, Marty Jannetty, he's been, winning a series of matches on shows like Thunder, Saturday Night, and also on Monday Nitro. And then eventually he takes on some of the B team members in the NWO, and he has a few successful victories against some of the lower tier members, like somewhere along the lines of a Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton, maybe some Japanese wrestlers that WCW had their relationship with New Japan at the time, so maybe they could have fought against like Great Muda or Masahiro Chono, and Maury Jannetty would score victory over them. Um, just examples of those members. Um, and then eventually he gets his hands on Scott Hall. And if you think about it, Scott Hall, his relationship with Shawn Michaels, who was Mario Jannetty's former tag partner back in the '80s, known as the Rockers. So you have those guys have a match on Nitro, pretty hard fought bout. Mario Jannetty at some point has Scott Hall beat, and eventually Conan interferes in the match. Considering he's still part of the NWO, and he clubs the TV title belt onto Marty Jannetty, causing a disqualification. And that's basically how you start up their program. So Marty Jannetty wants to get his hands on Conan and his television title. So Conan puts that belt up for grabs, and despite Marty's efforts, Conan ends up coming out on top. So Conan retains the TV title by locking in the Tequila Sunrise submission that he did. So Marty Jannetty submits, and Conan retains the belt. Third match we have is a tables match for the tag team title belts. So the Public Enemy goes in as the champions, defending the belts against Vicious and Delicious. So Vicious and Delicious, they've been a team. They've been, racking up some victories. They win the number one contenders match against Harlem Heat, and got like someone like Buff Bagwell. Maybe he'd be, kind of like the mouthpiece of the group. Although Scott Norton would have his fair share of promos. But basically, they're just being cocky and arrogant, and you know, at- they're convincing that they are that vicious, that they kind of live by that name, and they're willing to showcase that who the better tag team is. Because the Public Enemy like to play dirty, we like to play dirty. So why not have it be a tables match? Public Enemy, they have a specialty of uh, presenting tables during their matches and putting their opponents through the tables. Vicious and Delicious, try to issue kind of like a match stipulation added to it. Just to kind of comply with the with Uncensored, being that it's no DQs and anything goes. So eventually you have that match, and Public Enemy would retain the tag team title belts. So it almost you kind of also create some suspense. You maybe go in the match that that Bagwell and Norton may potentially take the straps off the Public Enemy, but at the end of the day, Public Enemy will come out on top and you'll retain the tag team title belts. I'm not sure if you want to make it an elimination match. I haven't really had a. I guess it's kind of more of an optional route to make it like a tables elimination match. So like if one opponent gets put to a table successfully, then the match continues until the second opponent gets put into the table. It's definitely going to be a tables match without a doubt, and the results remain the same. So Public Enemy to retain the tag belts. Fourth match, I wouldn't really necessarily consider this much of a match, but what's going to happen is that Disco Inferno's been kind of stagnant for the past several months. He hasn't been presented on pay per view since Sold Out. Um, so Disco Inferno's kind of been winning a few matches on TV and then losing some matches on TV. So it's kind of been an uphill battle, if you will. So Disco Inferno, he asked, requests JJ Dillon, because he's the WCW commissioner at the time, requests him to be a part of a pay per view and to kind of issue a challenge against anyone that can beat him. And his opponents kind of remain anonymous. So Disco Inferno tries to do some kind of open challenge invitational. Disco Inferno will come out of Uncensored, just issue an open challenge and and present whoever the opponent's going to be. And then Goldberg's music hits. Goldberg comes out unannounced as Disco Inferno's opponent, and basically squashes Disco Inferno in short order. Spear, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3. Goldberg wins the match. Even though it wouldn't really be much of a match, it would be kind of like a typical squash. But just to kind of continue to keep Goldberg relevant and try to continue his reign of terror as far as his streak is concerned. So I am planning on putting Goldberg in a marquee feud sometime. I'm gonna kind of spoil this a little bit, but Goldberg's gonna have his uh, actual first big feud at the next April pay per view. So Goldberg's gonna definitely get a push without a doubt. But in the meantime, Goldberg's trying to kind of find himself, and eventually, he destroys Disco Inferno in short order. A cruiserweight title defense. So Chris Jericho, defends the belt against Dean Malenko. Basically the same match that we saw from Uncensored. So I don't want to kind of reiterate too much in as far as like the build up was concerned. Just the same stuff that they did. Jericho making fun of Malenko and his father, and basically his family tree as far as their passion for professional wrestling is concerned. Yeah, so Chris Jericho, will go over Dean Malenko and retain the cruiserweight title belt. And then, Mean Gene comes out, asks Dean Malenko what's been going on. Basically Malenko says the final words that he's going home. So Malenko's off TV for, about a month or two. So yeah, so same thing as what we saw, and I thought this match was really great. So I wouldn't really take it off or replace it with something else. So very content with having this match on the card, and I would actually keep it in the way it did. So Jericho to retain the cruiserweight title. Submission match, and I guess you could maybe add Larry Zbyszko to serve as a special referee, and this match will consist of Bret Hart and Lex Luger, two technically sound athletes. So, Bret Hart, he came into WCW, served as a special enforcer in the match consisting of Larry Zbyszko and Eric Bischoff. And, we all know how that turns out. Lex Luger, Bret Hart and Lex Luger, they've been kind of a tag team on numerous occasions. They teamed with Larry Zbyszko to take on Bischoff and the Outsiders at Sold Out. Hart and Luger would continue to team up on like episodes of Nitro, and over time, there's starting to be somewhat of a bit of a rivalry between the two, and they're trying to kind of up one each other, especially when it comes to like one-on-one matches, and and they also try to put over just to kind of determine who the better submissionist is. So like Bret Hart's finisher was the sharpshooter. Lex Luger's submission finisher is the torture rack. So we emphasize on, uh, the two wrestlers known for, their submission moves. And Larry Zbyszko could be kind of like a mediator in terms of this situation because Zbyszko owes Bret Hart for serving as the special referee, the special enforcer, and helping him at Starrcade, and when he was trying to fend off Bischoff. Lex Luger, he kind of owes Zbyszko some credit since Zbyszko helped Lex Luger in a numerous amount of matches. Especially Halloween Havoc with Scott Hall. Um, so it all kind of culminates into this sort of submission match to really determine who has the better submission finisher. So I think this could be a great match, and Bret Hart will eventually go over. So Bret kind of continues his winning streak, as far as pay per views are concerned here in WCW. So really want to get the momentum, keep Bret Hart's momentum going, and Luger putting over Bret, having joined WCW not too long ago. So yeah, so Bret Hart to go over Lex Luger. And then we have is a false count anywhere match between Hollywood Hulk Hogan taking on the Macho Man Randy Savage. So, yes, so it's nearly been 10 years since the Mega Powers exploded, and 9 years after their WrestleMania 5 encounter, these two go at it once again. Only this time, Savage is kicked out of the NWO in the weeks leading into their match. Um, you know, it kind of really stems from Starrcade '97. Hogan lost the world title belt to Sting, and so there's been kind of a rift between NWO members, especially Hogan and Savage, and Hogan wants revenge on Bret Hart for screwing him over, but Savage tells him to calm down, calm down. He's been trying to support Hogan in this time of crisis. And then Sting and Hogan have the rematch at Sold Out, and NWO interferes in the match, try to help Hogan win the belt, but Sting tries to fend them all off. And then Randy Savage comes in, tries to attack Sting, but eventually there's some miscommunication along the way. So, like at some point, Sting moves out of the way and accidentally blindsides Hulk Hogan with the spray paint can. And this, Sting takes advantage to successfully retain the world title belt. And so yeah, so dissension continues to boil between Hogan and Savage, and Super Brawl happens. Savage takes on Bret Hart, but Hogan's kind of arguing that he should be the one taking on Bret Hart since he can't get his mind, can't get it off of him. Ever since Bret came to WCW, he screwed me over. I want revenge, but Savage is like, no, 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 no. I apologize for what I did, and I should be the one to take on Bret Hart. And they had that match at Super Brawl. So Hogan interferes, but unintentionally costs Randy Savage the match. So this is a false count anywhere match, so they could brawl all over the crowd, backstage, um, and eventually Randy Savage will win the match. Um, yeah, so you would expect maybe interference from Miss Elizabeth and Eric Bischoff maybe, or I think they had the Disciple in around this time. Disciple was Bruce Beefcake, but he went through like a lot of gimmick changes over the years. So whoever comes out interferes in the match, but at the end of the day, Randy Savage will find a way to triumph over Hulk Hogan. So there you have it. That. So I think this should be at least a tolerable match for these two guys. I know they weren't in their prime and like they were in the '80s, but they still had some gas in them. So I would have Randy Savage go over Hogan. Uh, the Bowery Death Cage match for the United States title. So we get to Diamond Dallas Page defending the belt against Raven. So they actually did the Bowery cage match at Slamboree, except I push it 2 months sooner. Um, yeah, so I really like the feud that they had around this time, and Raven acknowledging his past friendship with Diamond Dallas Page and how he how they were how close that they were. Basically have Raven talk about their friendship and how that even when the going gets tough, Raven was always there to support DDP. And times have changed, and because this is a cage match, obviously the point of this cage match is to kind of ban the Flock from entering the ring and basically interfering in the match in some shape or form because Raven has his uh Raven has the Flock, so he has a group to kind of back him up, but unfortunately this time the cage is kind of there to prevent the Flock from interfering. So they have the match, and basically it was kind of like a cage match, but it implements like last man standing rules. So there's no pinfalls, there's no submissions. The only way to win is if a certain competitor manages to survive at the 10 count and their opponent is still lying on the ground unconscious. So yeah, so whoever that one opponent that one competitor makes it up at the count of 10 will win the match. Perhaps maybe a bit of a blade job if they're allowed to do that. I mean, I know WCW was pretty strict on blade jobs during this time. But but maybe if that's just kind of like an optional route. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do that. But but to kind of really make it stand out from what WCW was providing at the time, especially with hardcore wrestling, especially over at ECW and even WWE's kind of embraced it, around this time. Really try to put over the cage match as like one of the most brutal match stipulations out there. But eventually, Raven will win the U.S. title from DDP. So yeah, we have a new champion in Raven. So definitely gonna have big plans for Raven. But DDP is gonna get taken out of action for a few months, just to kind of write him off kayfabe wise. Basically a work injury angle. So I didn't really have much for DDP, especially for the next pay per view. And so he's gonna definitely be out and really try to sell that injury and as well as put the heat on the Raven. So yeah, so Raven wins the U.S. title, and then our main event consists of the World Heavyweight Championship. So Sting defends that world title belt against Kevin Nash. So basically, I think I might have discussed this earlier in the video. Kevin Nash, has been coming out of a pretty heated match against the Giant at Super Brawl, and ends where Nash nailed that jackknife powerbomb, and um, you know and the Giant landed bad on his neck, so it got to the point where he ended up getting stretchered and taken to the hospital. So Kevin Nash is basically the word on the street. He proclaims himself to be the Giant Killer. Basically what the promo that he cut. When he his reaction after his match against the Giant, where he broke his neck. So Kevin Nash, he's been kind of the talk of the town, and JJ Dillon does come out and announce that if Kevin Nash were to use the Jackknife Powerbomb again, then he'd be fined $500. Um, so this kind of puts a bit of an obstacle, with Kevin Nash, since he can't do the power bomb, and it's the World Heavyweight Championship belt. So it's like, what is he gonna do? So the pressure is kind of on him, and Sting, um, these two guys, they go at it, and so I think Sting will eventually win with the Scorpion Death Drop on Kevin Nash. And obviously Scott Hall is gonna play a role in this match, try to interfere and cost Sting the match, and and then Lex Luger could maybe like come out and help his best friend, um, and then Sting ends up retaining the World Heavyweight Title belt. Yeah, so that's pretty much my card for Uncensored. Um, Let me know what you think about this card so far. I mean, did you like it? Did you dislike it? And if you did dislike it, how would you restructure the card differently? So yeah, so feel free to comment down in the comment section below. So stay tuned for the fourth installment as we cover the April pay-per-view Spring Stampede. So stick around for that, and until next time, this is Gold Standard 0924 signing out.